I remember that day clearly. The kind of day you build up in your heart for weeks, imagining every little smile, every tiny laugh, every warm hug. It was my daughter's 8th birthday. She had been talking about it for months. The cake, the decorations, the theme. Unicorns. She loved unicorns because, in her words, they're real in the hearts of people who believe. And I believed too. I believed in family. I believed that no matter how busy everyone was, they'd show up for her, for us. We'd spent the whole morning decorating the living room together. Pink, white, and gold balloons everywhere. A big handmade happy birthday Lily banner hung crookedly above the dining table because I'm terrible with tape. But she loved it. She giggled every time it leaned to one side. I remember her face. That innocent excitement, that pure kind of joy that only children have before the world teaches them disappointment. By noon, the table was full of snacks, sandwiches, her favorite cupcakes, and that big 2-tiered unicorn cake we saved for weeks to buy. I even took a half day off work, which wasn't easy. But it didn't matter, because family was coming. My parents, my sister, her husband, a few cousins. At least that's what they promised. As the clock ticked, I started to notice the silence. No car pulling up outside. "No, we're on our way," texts. Just the faint sound of the balloons brushing against the ceiling fan. Lily kept glancing at the window every few minutes, asking, "Mom, when will Grandma come?" I smiled and said, "Any minute now, sweetheart." But deep down, I was already checking my phone more often than she was. 1 hour passed, then 2. I texted my mother, no reply. Called my sister, went straight to voicemail. Even the cousins group chat was quiet, except for a few blue ticks that felt more like tiny daggers. By 4 p.m., Lily's voice had lost that sparkle. She stopped checking the window. She stopped smiling. She sat quietly at the table, her little legs swinging off the chair, staring at the untouched cake with those big brown eyes that still held a flicker of hope. "Maybe they forgot," she whispered, and that broke me in a way nothing ever had before. I tried to cheer her up. We played her favorite songs, danced a little, even blew out the candles together, just the two of us. She smiled for my sake. I could tell. But her eyes, they were saying something else. Something I'll never forget. That look of realization, that sometimes the people you love the most can make you feel invisible. I took photos anyway, tried to make it special, but later that night, when I scrolled through them, every picture looked empty. Not because the decorations weren't perfect, but because the people who were supposed to fill that space never came. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. A single message from my sister. "Hey, sorry we couldn't make it. We got caught up at Mom's place. Maybe next weekend?" No apology, no guilt. Just maybe next weekend. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I looked at Lily, asleep on the couch, clutching a half-eaten cupcake in her tiny hand. And in that quiet, I made a promise. Not out of anger, but out of love. A promise that one day they would understand what it felt like to be forgotten. That was the day everything changed. Not in a dramatic explosion, but in a slow, quiet shift deep inside me. Because sometimes revenge isn't about hurting people. It's about teaching them what pain really feels like. The kind that doesn't scream, but echoes in silence. And I was about to teach that lesson, in a way they would never forget. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains like it always did. Soft, warm, almost pretending that everything was normal. But inside, nothing felt normal anymore. Lily woke up early, her hair messy and her unicorn headband still on. She rubbed her sleepy eyes, looked around and asked, "Mom, did Grandma come after I fell asleep?" That one question felt like a dagger made of innocence. I forced a smile and said, "No, sweetheart, but maybe next time." She nodded slowly, the kind of nod children give when they're trying to accept something they shouldn't have to. She didn't talk much that morning. She just quietly helped me clean up the party decorations. Each balloon we popped echoed like a little heartbreak. And when I threw away the untouched cake slices, I made another silent promise to myself. Never again. Never again would I let my daughter feel that small, that invisible. and never again would I allow my family to treat us like an afterthought. That day, while Lily went to school, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. My phone was full of unread messages, belated happy birthday texts, casual emojis, and empty excuses. Got caught up with errands. Didn't realize it was today. You know how Mom is, she didn't want to drive out. They had excuses for everything except for showing up. At first I wanted to yell, to call each of them and ask, would you have forgotten if it was your child? But then I stopped myself. Because anger fades. What doesn't fade is understanding. And I wanted them to understand deeply. That's when the idea came. Not instantly, not dramatically, but like a slow sunrise. Small, gentle, and certain. If they could so easily ignore us, then maybe it was time they felt what being ignored truly meant. But I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted to teach them. To show them how absence feels, how silence can echo louder than words ever could. So I started thinking, what's the one thing my family never misses? The answer was simple: family gatherings. Every year, without fail, they hosted big dinners, anniversaries, barbecues, moments where everyone showed up just to be seen, to post, to talk, to gossip. They never missed their events, just mine. Just Lily's, and that's when I decided, this year, I wouldn't show up either. But not just once. I would vanish from their world entirely. The plan began small. I stopped calling first. No morning texts. No goodnight messages. No family group replies. At first, nobody noticed. Days turned into weeks, and still silence. Then came my mother's anniversary dinner, the one event she talked about for months. Normally, I'd be the one baking her favorite lemon cake, helping set the table, making sure the kids behaved. But that day, I didn't even pick up her call. She texted, "Are you coming?" I replied simply, "Sorry, got caught up with Lily. Maybe next weekend?" The same words they'd sent me. And hitting send felt powerful, not out of spite, but out of balance. Like the universe had quietly shifted a little. The next few weeks were strange. My absence became a quiet shadow at their gatherings. At first, they brushed it off. She must be busy. She'll come next time. But next time never came. And that's when they started calling. Really calling. Voicemails, texts, even showing up once at my doorstep. But I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to. Not yet. Because what I wanted wasn't their attention. It was their awareness. I wanted them to feel that dull ache of being left out, of realizing you don't matter as much as you thought. The same ache my daughter felt that night, staring at an empty table full of untouched food. At night, I would watch Lily sleep and think, this is for you, sweetheart. This is so you never doubt your worth again. Each quiet evening without a family message felt like another small victory. Not because I was being petty, but because I was reclaiming something they'd taken from me. Respect. They had treated my kindness like background noise. But silence, real silence, gets attention. It didn't take long. After a few months, my mother called one afternoon, her voice heavy with guilt. "We haven't seen you in forever," she said softly. "I feel like we lost touch." I wanted to tell her that she was the one who disconnected the wires between us, but instead, I just said, "Yeah, I guess that happens when you stop showing up for people." The pause on the other end told me she understood. But I wasn't done yet, because while silence taught them the sting of neglect, I wanted them to truly see it, to face it the way Lily had faced that empty birthday table. That realization became the next stage of my plan. Not revenge, just reflection, a way to remind them what family really means. And so I began preparing something special, something that would bring every piece of this story full circle. A gathering of my own, one they'd never forget, not because of who didn't show up, but because of what they'd finally see when they did. I didn't expect the silence to last that long. At first, it was peaceful, a quiet I hadn't known in years. No drama-filled phone calls. No sarcastic comments about my simple life. Just me, my daughter, and the soft rhythm of days that actually felt calm. But silence has a strange way of echoing. At night, when Lily went to sleep, that calm began to turn into something heavier. There were moments when I caught myself wondering, did I go too far? Was I really teaching them a lesson, or was I just becoming like them? Distant, cold, absent. Then I'd remember Lily's face on her birthday, how her eyes dimmed when no one walked through the door. And that doubt would dissolve again, because what I was doing wasn't about revenge. It was about reflection, theirs and mine. Weeks turned into months. Family group chat, still active, still full of pictures of dinners, jokes, random check-ins. But my name? Never mentioned, not once, until one day my sister posted a photo, a big family barbecue. Everyone was there. Everyone but me and Lily. She had captioned it. Family is everything. I stared at those words for a long time. It's strange how words can sound so hollow when they come from people who left your child crying on her birthday. For a second, I thought about commenting something sharp. Something like, "Glad you remembered what family means," a few months late. But I didn't. I just turned off my phone and whispered to myself, "They'll understand soon enough." Then something shifted. My absence started to bother them. I could feel it in the way they suddenly tried to pull me back. A text from Mom. "We're all thinking of you lately. Haven't seen you in ages. How's Lily?" A message from my cousin. "We miss your cooking. You have to come next time." Even my sister called one night, her tone light but uneasy. "Hey, are we okay?" "You've been quiet." I wanted to laugh. Quiet? They were the ones who taught me how to be silent. But instead of confronting her, I said softly, "Yeah, I've just been busy. You know how it is." And before she could say anything else, I added, "Anyway, I'm glad you're doing well." The gentleness in my voice must have thrown her off, because for once she didn't know what to say. That was the moment I realized something important. Sometimes, silence hurts louder than any argument ever could. You see, before, my family always expected me to chase them, to fix things, to show up first. But when I stopped doing that, they were forced to see what they had built. An empty kind of togetherness, full of smiles for photos, but hollow underneath. And that's when the guilt began to creep into their voices. A few weeks later, my mother called again. Her tone was softer this time, her sentences slower. "You know, I was looking through old pictures today," she said. "There's this one of Lily's 5th birthday. We were all there. Remember that?" I smiled faintly. "I remember," I said. "She had chocolate on her nose, and you laughed until you cried." We both went quiet. And in that silence, I heard it. The sound of realization. The quiet ache of regret starting to form in her heart. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I wish we'd been there this year. Things just got away from us." Her voice cracked a little, like she was saying more than those words could hold. For a moment, I wanted to let it go, to tell her it was okay. But then I looked at Lily, playing in the living room, building her little tower of toy unicorns, each one placed carefully, lovingly, as if trying to create the perfect world she never got that day. So instead I said gently, "I know, Mom, but Lily remembers." Kids don't forget as easily as we do. After that call, things got quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of quiet. Not absence, awareness. They started noticing the gap my presence used to fill. The missing laughter at dinners. The missing pictures in their posts. The missing voice that always soothed their arguments. It's almost poetic, how people never realize what you bring to their lives until you stop bringing it. Then one night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked at me and asked, "Mom, are we going to have another birthday soon?" I smiled. "Of course we are, why?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Can we invite Grandma and Auntie again?" That caught me off guard. For all the pain they'd caused, Lily still wanted them there, still believed in family, still believed that people could do better. And maybe she was right. Maybe this silent disappointment, this mirror I'd held up to them, had finally done its job. Because teaching people a lesson isn't about breaking them. It's about giving them a chance to grow. That night, after she fell asleep, I opened my notebook and started writing. An idea had been forming quietly inside me for weeks. Now it was time to bring it to life. A gathering. Not a party. Not a celebration. Something deeper. A family dinner and hosted by me. An invitation to everyone who forgot us. But this time it wouldn't be about food or photos. It would be about truth. A dinner that would show them what they'd ignored, what they'd missed, and what family should really mean. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted reflection, and I wanted Lily to see that sometimes. Strength isn't in shouting. It's in forgiving. That night, I smiled for the first time in a long while. Because the next chapter of this story, our story, was finally beginning. I used to think smiles could fix everything. That if I just stayed kind, stayed patient, stayed forgiving, people would eventually see the effort behind my quietness. But life has a way of teaching you that even the warmest smiles can hide the deepest wounds. The day after I decided to host that dinner, I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. Not the rushed glance before work, not the quick check before school runs, a real look. There were faint lines around my eyes, small signs of years spent trying to please everyone, hold everything together, and still smile through the pain. I touched the glass gently, almost like I was touching the version of myself I used to be, the one who believed that family always shows up. But now, that woman was gone. In her place was someone quieter, wiser, a little scarred, but stronger. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning the dinner. Not in a grand way. No extravagant themes or decorations this time. Just something warm, simple, and honest. Homemade food, soft lighting, and one empty chair at the table. The same way Lily's birthday table had looked, with one missing face after another. But every time I stirred a pot, every time I set a plate down, old memories surfaced. The laughter that used to fill the room. The teasing that sometimes hurt more than it should have. The quiet looks of judgment when I wasn't as successful or sociable as the rest of them. They never said it outright, but I always felt it. That subtle tone that said, "You're the one who didn't quite fit in." And yet I kept smiling. 'Cause family was family, right? You forgive. You endure. You smile. Until one day that smile becomes heavy. That's what my therapist once called emotional debt. When you keep giving understanding, patience, and love to people who never return it, one day, you wake up and realize you've been bankrupt all along. That birthday was my breaking point, but truthfully, the cracks had been forming for years. I remembered one Christmas when Lily was just 3. We had spent hours wrapping gifts, excited to surprise everyone. When we got there, my sister barely looked up from her phone, and Mom said, "Oh, you didn't have to bring anything." Like my effort was a burden, not love. I laughed it off, of course, because that's what I did. Laugh, smile, nod, repeat. But driving home that night, Lily was asleep in the back seat, clutching the little toy she'd brought to show Grandma. No one had even noticed it. That's when I realized my daughter was learning from me. Learning that love means staying quiet, that kindness means accepting less, and that terrified me. So when I looked at her now, helping me set the table for the dinner, humming softly to herself, I felt something shift inside. She was still so pure, still believed people could change. And I wanted to believe that too. But belief without boundaries only leads to heartbreak. So I told myself, this dinner won't just be about showing them what they did wrong. It'll be about showing Lily what it looks like to stand tall, to speak truth gently, and to protect your peace without bitterness. The days passed quickly. Word spread that I was hosting something. Mom called first. "Oh, you're finally doing a family dinner again? That's wonderful. We've missed you." There was excitement in her voice, like nothing had ever happened. Like months of silence could be erased by one meal. Part of me wanted to snap, to remind her that she was the one who had missed us first. But I stayed calm. Because sometimes the best way to reveal truth is to let people walk into it on their own. So I just said, "Yes, Mom, it's time." As the day drew closer, I could feel a strange mixture of peace and anxiety swirling inside me. Peace, because I knew what I needed to say. Anxiety, because I wasn't sure how they'd react when they heard it. One night, after Lily went to bed, I sat alone in the dining room. The table was already set. Plates, candles, the soft glow of fairy lights. It looked beautiful. But as I stared at it, I started to cry. Not out of sadness, but because this table had seen everything. It had seen laughter, tears, forgotten birthdays, and empty promises. And now it was about to see the truth. I whispered to myself, "This isn't about revenge. This is about release." And in that moment, I felt something lift from my chest. A quiet strength, the kind that doesn't come from anger but from acceptance. The next morning, Lily woke up excited. "Mom, are they really coming today?" I smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, they are." She ran around helping me arrange the flowers, humming her favorite song. Watching her, I realized how healing it was to see her joy return, the kind of joy that comes when you decide to move forward, not backward. But deep down, I knew this dinner would not just be about healing for me. It would be about truth for them. Because behind every smile I'd given over the years, there had been wounds they never cared to see. And tonight, they finally would. The day of the dinner felt different from the moment the sun came up. There was a stillness in the air, the kind that comes before something important. Even the house seemed to know it. The curtains swayed softly, the candles waited unlit, and the scent of baked bread filled the kitchen like a memory trying to make peace. Lily was glowing with excitement. She kept asking, "Do you think they'll like the food, Mom?" And I kept answering, "They will, sweetheart." But deep down, I knew this evening wasn't about the food. It was about truth. By 6 o'clock, the table was set. Plates perfectly aligned, soft music humming in the background. I looked around the room one last time. Everything was calm, yet my heart beat with quiet thunder. This was it. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath before opening the door. There they were, my mother, my sister, her husband, 2 cousins, smiling, holding gifts, acting as if nothing had ever happened. "Finally," my sister exclaimed, wrapping her arms around me. "It's been forever." I smiled politely. "It has." My mother kissed my cheek. "You look tired, darling. Been working too hard?" I could have laughed, if only she knew how much work this moment had taken. They stepped inside, admiring the setup. "Oh, this is lovely," Mom said, running her fingers along the edge of the table. "It smells amazing," one cousin added. Lily came running out of her room, wearing her favorite little yellow dress. "Grandma!" she shouted, her face lighting up. For a second, the whole room softened. My mother knelt down, hugging her tightly. "Oh, look at you! You've grown so much." And in that one moment, that single hug, a flicker of hope passed through me. Maybe they did feel sorry. Maybe this would finally be the night we cleared the fog that had sat between us for too long. But then, as they all began chatting and settling in, I noticed something familiar. Something I'd almost forgotten. The noise, the jokes, the small talk that floated over deeper things like a layer of cheap perfume trying to hide a wound. They talked about the new shopping mall, about a cousin's promotion, about who bought which car. But not once did anyone mention that day. Not once did they say, "We're sorry we missed her birthday." The laughter in the room began to feel heavy, almost deafening. I forced myself to smile, to keep serving dishes, to keep the mood light. But inside, the silence between the words was louder than ever. Halfway through dinner, Lily said softly, "Grandma, do you want to see my birthday pictures?" The table went quiet. Even the clinking of forks stopped. My mother hesitated. "Oh, yes, of course, sweetheart." Lily ran to her room and came back with the little photo album we'd made, the one with only 2 people in every picture, her and me. She climbed onto Grandma's lap, flipping through the pages proudly. "See? Mommy made the cake herself, and this is when we blew the candles. She smiled brightly, not realizing that every word was cutting deeper than any accusation could. I watched my mother's face slowly fall as she turned each page. The empty chairs, the half-eaten cupcakes, the lonely decorations. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. My sister glanced at me, her eyes wide with guilt. I didn't know it was that day," she murmured. I looked at her and said quietly, "You did. You all did." Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was heavy, the kind of silence that holds truth inside it. Sharp, undeniable, and painful. I took a deep breath and said, "I didn't invite you tonight to make you feel bad. I just wanted you to see what it feels like to be unseen." No one moved. No one spoke. "I waited for you all that day," I continued. "Not for the gifts, not for the help. Just for you. Because Lily believes family always comes through. And when you didn't?" She started questioning that. My voice trembled slightly, but I didn't stop. "I've spent months thinking I was too sensitive. That maybe I expected too much. But you know what I realized? Wanting to be remembered isn't asking too much. It's asking for love." Tears welled in my mother's eyes. She reached for my hand. "We were wrong," she whispered. "We thought you knew how much we care." I smiled faintly. Sometimes love needs to be shown, not assumed. For the first time in years, the house felt real again. No pretense, no performance. Just truth. Raw, quiet, healing truth. My sister began crying softly. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," I told her. "Just don't forget again. Not her. Not anyone who waits for you." She nodded, wiping her eyes. Lily looked confused but happy. She didn't understand the full weight of what had just happened, but she could feel something good was returning to the room. I hugged her tightly and whispered, "This is what grown-ups call a wake-up call, sweetheart. Sometimes people don't realize what they've done until they see it." The rest of the night unfolded quietly. We ate. We laughed, softly this time. And when they left, each one hugged me longer than they ever had before. Mom lingered at the door. She looked back at me and said, "I'll make it up to her." "I promise," I nodded. "Just be there next time." That's all she ever needed. When the door closed, the house fell into a peaceful silence again. But this time, it wasn't lonely. It was healing. Lily curled up beside me on the couch. "Mom, that was a nice dinner," she said sleepily. I kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. It really was. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from anger or payback. It comes from letting truth speak for itself. And that night, truth finally spoke. In the days that followed, something subtle began to shift. Not loudly, not suddenly, but in small, deliberate ways that only the heart could notice. The morning after the dinner, the house felt strangely lighter. The walls, once heavy with unspoken feelings, now carried a quiet calm, as if they too had been waiting for the truth to breathe. I woke up to the sound of Lily humming in her room, arranging her dolls around a tiny toy table. She looked up and said, "Mom, can we have another dinner soon? But this time everyone can come again." Her innocence disarmed me. She had already forgiven them. No bitterness, no grudge, just hope. Children forgive faster than adults because their hearts haven't learned pride yet. I smiled softly. "Yes, sweetheart, we will." But I knew something had changed, not just in her, but in them. Later that week, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Good morning, darling. Can we visit this Sunday? I'd love to help Lily with her school project." And then another from my sister. "I'm sorry again about everything. I was so wrapped up in my own life I didn't see yours. Thank you for the dinner. It woke me up." That word, "woke me up," stayed with me. Because that was exactly what it was. Not revenge, not guilt. A wake-up call that turned into reflection. I used to think healing meant people apologizing perfectly or righting every wrong. But healing, I realized, isn't a single moment. It's motion. It's when people start moving differently because of what they finally understand. Over the next few weeks, my mother visited often. She brought Lily little surprises. A new book, a small craft kit, homemade cookies. But more than the gifts, she brought presents. She listened. She stayed longer. My sister started calling, not out of obligation but curiosity, asking about my day, my plans, my art. It felt real this time. Unhurried, human. And me? I learned to receive again, without suspicion, without waiting for it to disappear. Forgiveness isn't about pretending the hurt didn't happen. It's about refusing to let it dictate what comes next. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the teacher of a quiet, necessary lesson. One that didn't need words, only honesty. One afternoon, Lily and I were in the garden planting new flowers. She dug a small hole with her tiny hands and asked, "Mom, do flowers remember when it rains?" I smiled. "Maybe they don't remember the rain, sweetheart, but they remember how it helped them grow." She nodded thoughtfully and placed a seed in the soil. And in that moment, I realized the same was true for us. The forgotten day, the silence, the disappointment, the confrontation, they were all part of the rain. Painful, messy, but essential. Without them, there wouldn't be growth. Without them, there wouldn't be this peace. The family never went back to being perfect. There were still flaws, missed calls, late replies. But there was also awareness now. A sense that love wasn't something to assume, but to nurture. Every action, every visit, every small moment became part of a larger motion, the motion of learning, of remembering, of trying. And that was enough. In the quiet of one evening, after putting Lily to bed, I sat by the window watching the last light fade. The reflection in the glass looked softer, calmer, someone who had walked through the storm and come out clearer. I whispered to myself, the lesson wasn't for them alone. It was for me too. Because sometimes the universe doesn't send wake-up calls to punish people. It sends them to realign hearts. To remind us that love, when left unattended, forgets its own language. And when spoken again, even softly, even late, it can still heal what silence once broke. A year passed, quietly, almost like the world had turned the page without me noticing. But deep down, I had been waiting for one day, the same day that once broke me, Lily's birthday. This time she turned 9. And when she woke up that morning, sunlight poured through the curtains like it had been waiting for her too. Golden, soft, forgiving. I stood by her door for a moment, watching her yawn and stretch with that sleepy smile that still melted me every time. She saw me holding a tray, pancakes shaped like hearts, strawberries on top, and a single candle flickering in the middle. "Happy birthday, my love," I said softly. She gasped, giggled, and blew out the candle, whispering a wish I couldn't hear. And that was okay, because I no longer needed to know. Her happiness was enough. The day moved slower this time. No frantic cleaning, no desperate waiting for replies. Just peace. We spent the morning painting together, her laughter filling the house like music. I didn't even realize how much I had missed that sound. The sound of simple joy, untouched by disappointment. By noon, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, I froze for a second. My family stood there, my mother holding flowers, my sister balancing a gift bag and a cake box, her husband waving awkwardly with that half-guilty smile. "Surprise," my mother said softly. But this time, it wasn't a surprise that hurt. It was one that healed. Lily's face lit up as she ran to them, hugging my mother so tightly that even my mother's eyes began to shine. There was no grand apology, no dramatic words, just genuine warmth in every gesture. They joined us inside, and the house slowly filled with laughter, with small jokes, with that comforting sound of belonging I once thought was gone forever. The decorations were simple, just a few balloons, a homemade cake, nothing fancy. But somehow everything glowed, because it wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about presence. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I stepped out to the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and rose, colors that reminded me of endings that feel like beginnings. Lily came out, holding one of her new gifts, a small snow globe. She shook it gently and said, "Mom, look. It's snowing inside, but the house in there still has light." I smiled, feeling my heart swell with something quiet and beautiful. That's right, sweetheart. Even when it snows, even when it's cold, the light doesn't go out. It just waits to be seen again. She nodded, resting her head against my shoulder. And together, we watched the last bit of daylight fade, knowing it would always return. That night, after tucking her in, I sat alone for a moment, letting the memories wash over me. The silence, the disappointment, the anger, the forgiveness. All of it had led here. To this peace. I realized something I hadn't before. Revenge never really heals. It only opens the door for reflection to step in. And once that reflection begins, change follows like sunlight through cracked blinds. The lesson I had wanted to teach wasn't about guilt. It was about awareness, about remembering what love truly means. And as strange as it sounds, they weren't the only ones who learned. I did too. The next morning, the house smelled like cake and coffee. Lily was already awake, humming the same song she did last year. Only this time it sounded different, lighter, fuller. I took a deep breath, smiled to myself, and whispered, "We made it through the dark, didn't we?" And for the first time in a long while, the answer felt clear. We did. We came back to the light, not because everything was perfect again, but because we remembered how to love, how to show up, and how to never let anyone, especially family, feel forgotten again. Sometimes life breaks us not to end our story, but to make us rewrite it with more truth. The forgotten day was painful, yes, but it became the seed of something better. Because love, when tested, either fades or becomes light, strong enough to guide others back home. And in our case, it brought everyone home. I often find myself thinking back to that day, the one that started it all. The day that felt like the world had forgotten me. Like my love, my effort, and my daughter's smile didn't matter to anyone. But now, after everything, I see it differently. That forgotten day wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of awareness, the beginning of truth. Because sometimes life teaches you the hardest lessons in the softest ways, not through loud confrontations, but through quiet moments of realization, through a child's silent disappointment, through a mother's aching heart, through the stillness of an empty room that should have been filled with laughter. I used to think love was guaranteed, that family was automatic, unconditional, constant. But love, I've learned, is a living thing. It needs attention. It needs time. It needs effort. You can't assume it will stay just because it once existed. You have to water it, tend to it, protect it, the same way you protect a flame from the wind. That's what my family forgot. And that's what they learned to remember again. Teaching them a lesson was never about revenge. It was about reflection. I didn't want them to suffer the way I did. I wanted them to feel what I felt so they could understand. So they could see the cracks they never noticed before. And maybe that's what true justice really is. Not punishment, but realization. Because when realization happens, change follows naturally. And when change happens from the heart, it lasts. Now when I look at Lily, I don't see the girl who was forgotten. I see a girl who learned early that love is not measured by parties or presents, but by presence. I see a girl who, despite her disappointment, still forgave, still smiled, still believed. And that's strength. She taught me too. She taught me that bitterness is heavy, but forgiveness is light. That sometimes the best revenge is simply living with peace, not anger. And that the ones who hurt you don't always need to be destroyed. Sometimes they just need to be reminded. If there's one thing the forgotten day taught me, it's this. You can't control how others love you, but you can control how you respond when they don't. You can choose silence, or you can choose wisdom. You can close your heart, or you can open it wider. Not for them, but for yourself. Because love doesn't lose its power just because someone else fails to show it. It only loses power when you forget what it means. And so I forgave them, not to erase what happened, but to set myself free from it. I forgave so that Lily could grow up knowing that pain doesn't define you. Your response to it does. The forgotten day once made me question everything I believed about family, loyalty, and love. But now, it stands as proof that even broken connections can be rebuilt. if someone has the courage to start that conversation. Narrator's closing lines, voiceover outro. Sometimes the people closest to you will forget your worth. Sometimes they'll let you down without even realizing it. But never let their silence become your story. Let it become your strength. Because the light that fades can always return. And when it does, it shines even brighter on those who learn to appreciate it. The forgotten day didn't destroy me. It defined me. And in that quiet, painful moment when the world forgot us, I remembered who I was. And that made all the difference.